Okay, can you hear that? Is that all right? Okay, morning everyone. I'm just going to ask if people in the lobby can hear me, if they can start coming in. Yeah, so we can try and stick to time. You're on at 10 past. Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Yeah. Okay, guys, if you just grab a seat and we'll be starting in a couple of minutes. Don't be shy, plenty of seats over at the front here if you want to come and sit down. Excellent. Okay, are we good to go? All right, well, I'm just going to, good morning, everyone, and just welcome to day 2 of the ISTO conference. For those of you here yesterday, fantastic day with some really, really inspiring talks. And we've got an amazing agenda today as well, which I'm really looking forward to. Just to quickly whiz you guys through what's going on today. We're kicking off with a new study into surf therapy and autism led by Dr. Hannah Devine-Wright, who's the WAVE Project's evaluator, and there's some input from Professor Sir Simon Baron-Cohen, who many of you will know is a leading autism expert. 10:30, we've got a panel on transgender and non-binary inclusion led by Alison Carney, which I think is going to be really fascinating. And then at 11:30, Surfing Away from Trauma from Yvette Curtis of WAVE Wahinis, who's got, I think, a really amazing story to tell. And then after lunch this afternoon, the WAVE Alliance, which is like an international network of projects, are going to be talking about their work. Messa Leone is going to be joining us online, I believe. And then following him, Hugo Taghome from Surfers Against Sewage is talking about protecting our green spaces. And we've got Nick Hounsfield from The Wave talking about wave pools. And then one thing I'm really looking forward to, end of the day, is our beneficiaries panel of young people, which I think is going to be really interesting hearing their perspectives on stuff. So I'd really like to welcome Dr. Hannah Devine-Wright, who's going to be starting our morning this morning. Welcome, Hannah.
Thanks, Joe, for the introduction. And thank you for turning up this morning at 9 o'clock. I know the weather's probably on my side, actually. If it had been a nicer day, I think more of you would have been down the beach. But thanks for being here. And I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about my work with the WAVE Project and this new study, which is planned to look into autism with the Cambridge Research Unit. So, there we go. Right. What are the kind of things I'm going to talk to you about? Well, just a little bit of an overview in a very sort of academic kind of way. It's going to be an introduction to the existing team, really, who've been working with the WAVE Project for a while. And I'm going to give you an example of one of the projects that we're currently working on, Prescription Surf. I'm going to talk sort of generally about how we've evidenced surf therapy within the WAVE Project. And I'm going to then talk to you about this focus on autism with the Autism Research Centre. It's a project which we're calling, I know it says Wave to Wellness there, but I think we're going to expand it to Waves. No, we know it's going to be Waves, Waves to Wellness anyway, a new study into autism and surf therapy. And I'm going to go to give you a little bit of an overview of what that means for us in terms of doing research and how we're going to set it up with a smaller kind of feasibility study and then a larger randomised controlled trial. And also why we might do that. And I'm going to bring in Simon briefly in the middle of this and introduce you to him both online, and then he's going to be available with Carrie on the Hoover app. So if you've got that, you can ask questions, and it's sort of going to be interactive online. So firstly, I suppose, apologies for not being Simon Baron-Cohen, because I know that you were probably expecting him, and you got me instead. So out to dinner last night, I actually said to someone, "Oh yes, I'm going to be doing the talk in the morning," and this friend said, this colleague I've just met yesterday said, "Oh, how disappointing." So I was like, okay, well, I'm sorry if you feel disappointed. But anyway, I'm Hannah Devine Wright, and I'm an environmental psychologist. So environmental psychology is like one of those catch-all phrases which can mean pretty much anything I want it to mean day by day. But essentially, I suppose, I'm a psychologist and I'm interested in the relationship between people and places. So, and they might be natural places, they might be urban places. But obviously, in the context of the WAVE project, I'm interested in people's interaction with their natural places and how that affects their well-being. And all the work that I've done with the WAVE project has been in collaboration with Kath Godfrey, who's a health psychologist. Unfortunately, she's not able to attend the conference, but you'll have noticed that any publications that we've done are always joint publications, and we're very much a kind of team. We go back quite a long way. We met at university together, and it's been it was always our life's ambition to work together, and we've done that with the WAVE project, and it's been a personal and professional pleasure to work with Kath. So as an environmental psychologist, it did strike me this morning that I was going to say to you, are you all sitting in the same places that you were in yesterday? And I have heard a few people say, I'm deliberately not sitting in the same place because I want to socialise. So I would strongly suggest that, as a very small kind of modification of your environment, you do, at the next talk, sit somewhere different, okay? Just to sort of feel that little bit of discomfort and to kind of meet new people. So anyway. So I'm actually associated with the European Centre for Environment and Human Health, who are based down in Truro, and they're part of the University of Exeter. And you might be familiar with a lot of the sort of blue health research that they've done. I'm an honorary senior research fellow with them, but I'm also an independent consultant. And it's my capacity really as an independent consultant that I've been working with the WAVE project. So we've been evidencing surf therapy with the WAVE projects for quite a while now. It's about sort of 8 years, I think, since about 2013. And we've been involved with lots of different projects over those years. But essentially what we've been brought in to do is to try and assess to some degree what impact the WAVE project has been having on the clients who take part in it. And to do that, we're academics really, we've been using a variety of different methods, both quantitative and qualitative, to look at people's experience of surfing. And these range from a survey, which is essentially a quantitative measure made up of different items which we ask people to respond to. And I know there'll be lots of people in the room who are surf coordinators with the WAVE project. And I'm just going to apologise in advance to them for the survey, which I know that there is some sort of consternation about why we do this, and do we really have to do this? Because it is a pre and post survey which we ask the surf instructors to give to the clients before they take part in the WAVE project, and then immediately afterwards. And obviously, getting a bunch of children to complete 3 or 4 pages of statements on the beach is not an easy thing to do, and there's a lot of bribery involved, I think, at times. But anyway, we're very, very grateful for the efforts that the surf instructors put into collecting this data, because over the years, it has been, the survey is really at the core of the evidence that we've collected. And the data that we've collected with this survey has enabled the WAVE project to evidence the impact that it's having, and to, in doing that, really make a case for its existence, both to the clients, to their families, and importantly, to funders who really want evidence of what has been happening. So, although we know that it's an onerous task to complete this survey, we do use other methods like interviews and focus groups and more thematic analysis of logbooks, where when we use those, we're more interested in looking at change over time and other people's records of what might have happened during a session. But all of the measures that we use, we try and make them as client-centred and tailored as possible. So although it may not seem like it, there is a lot of work that goes on in the background to actually adapt these measures over time. We haven't just sort of produced something in 2013 and then kept rolling it out over the years. You know, what we've been doing in the background is getting feedback from SURF coordinators and from clients over time, and keep modifying what we do and tailoring it to the clients themselves often. Because we want to essentially use ways of assessing well-being that are meaningful to the people who take part in the project. And then we disseminate this as much as we can through reports that we write for the WAVE project and through more academic and practitioner outputs over the years, like the community practitioner article that we've got there. So I thought you might like an example of what we've been doing, but I'm actually going to come back to this after I've talked a little bit more about the survey itself. This is what it looks like. This is the front page anyway. And you'll see, you can't probably see actually because it's too small a font, but each of the items here, they have 5 response categories, and we're asking people to say how much they feel that this applies to them, whether it's never, not much, some of the time, quite a lot, or all of the time. And the number one item that we've got at the top of this, the front page of the questionnaire, is about trust. So there are people in my life I can trust. So as Joe was saying yesterday, you know, trust is very important to the WAVE project, and we have been monitoring trust in this sort of survey for quite a long time. But some of these items, we don't just sort of include them as one on their own. What we do is we package them together into scales which have been shown to measure the broader thing that we're interested in, which is obviously in this case is well-being. So for example, there are 6 items in here which come together to form what we call the positive outlook scale, which is part of a broader Sterling wellbeing scale. Now, this Sterling wellbeing scale, for those who are interested in wellbeing in a little bit of detail, it does actually have sort of 2 parts to it. It has a positive outlook part, and it has an emotional outlook part. But what we found over the years is that the emotion items in that Sterling scale don't really work for the client group in the WAVE project. And part of that, we think, is because the items are things like, I'm feeling very relaxed. And for some of the children who are taking part, actually feeling relaxed isn't actually going to be something that they necessarily are going to experience with or without the WAVE project. So we quite early on realised that these weren't working for people, and we took them out. So we do just focus on part of the Sterling scale. And at different times with different projects, the funders come along and they say, well, we know what we're interested in, and we would like you to include items that are really important to us in your survey, as if it's something that they can just sort of, as if it's ever expandable, this sort of survey. But obviously our intention is to keep it as small as possible, so it's got the minimum impact on the clients that we're asking to complete it, because it is quite long already, and we don't really want it to be any longer. But at times we are asked to sort of like, can you just bring in this extra 4 items about the national wellbeing sort of scales and things like this. So where we have to, we do. But what we do is we append those extra items onto another page, so not everybody has to complete them. Only those children who are actually taking part in that particular project need to do that. So we've got lots of different measures. We try and keep it all very positive. So that's something that, from an academic perspective, often items are rephrased or negatively worded, because the idea is that if you want to sort of almost trick your kind of respondents, so that if you have something phrased in a positive way, you don't want them to kind of keep answering in the same way. So you put in a few negatively worded items, and then they're expected to kind of go, oh, I've got to really think about that, and then answer it. And that might be, I mean, that is a generally accepted way of doing research for adults. But for these children, it's not appropriate, we feel, to have negatively worded items where you're saying, how much don't you care about yourself, or something like that. That's just not appropriate to ask, you know. So pedants might criticise us for this, but we feel that it's more important to be sort of client-centred than it is to be that academically rigorous. So as I say, we've evolved this in response to feedback from clients themselves, from SURF coordinators and so on, so forth. And we do include in these measures both open-ended items, these would be closed items because we're sort of like a forced choice. You have to choose one of these. We also include open-ended stuff and word associations. So I thought it would be a good idea to show you the kind of thing that comes up when we ask an open-ended question. So what do you like best about the WAVE project? And as you can see, this is based on the number of responses basically gives you a larger word. So it's quite easy to follow. So clearly surfing, fun, everything, volunteers, very important, friends, water, sea, people being helpful, playing is in there as well, standing up. So, and we can look at these responses and then look at the sort of themes that run through these. What do you dislike about the WAVE project? Nothing. Number one answer, nothing. You know, there's a little bit in there which is more difficult to read, especially if you're at the back, but cold is in there, wetsuits are definitely in there, falling off, big waves and cold water. But basically, over and over again, when we ask people, you know, what do you dislike about the WAVE project? Absolutely nothing, which is wonderful, isn't it? What words do people associate with surfing? Well, number one, fun. So this is about 20% of the responses that we get are number one, fun. In more than half of the responses, when we ask people if you'd like to give us like up to 3 words to associate with surfing, the first word is going to be fun. And I think that's a sort of credit to the WAVE project, to Joe, to his entire team, you know, that this is over and over again, this is what young people are experiencing, this is what's driving this well-being, is having fun. And being happy, feeling confident is in there. So excited, awesome. And what we find when we sort of look at these responses and we look at how they sort of pan out together is that there's sort of different themes going on. So there's the fun theme, there's the natural environment themes about waves, there's happy, there's emotional aspects to it which are happy. So although we can't may not be able to get to those emotive aspects through a scale, we are getting to it in different ways using this. And we don't get responses that just say, what do you think about the WAVE project? Oh, it's really good, or it's nice, or it's okay. We get, it's awesome, it's fantastic, it's exceptional. And those, you're not going to get those kind of responses if you had a closed response, because people don't tend to use the extremes of the scale, you know, so you'd be missing those kind of things. And the psychological aspects are really what in here are feeling confident and feeling free. So this is just a summary kind of illustration, really, of what we find over and over again in terms of well-being and the Sterling scale. There's that kind of difference. We run statistical analysis on it, and it's always a significant difference. So I'm just going to go back and, well, actually, I'm going to just say, so let me look at the time, and then I'll decide, actually, what I'm going to say next. Okay, so in summary, I suppose all the data we're finding shows a consistently strong and robust improvement of for well-being for boys and girls on all aspects of well-being, competence, resilience and social connectedness. And that's, we find that across all of the different locations where the WAVE project is happening as well. So I think what I'll do is I'll move, rather than go back to the example of prescription surf, I think I'll go on to talk to you, give you more time with Simon in a moment as well. So although what I've presented you at the moment is a sort of description of the data that we collect. Now, as academics and as you do yourselves, and you hear it through all of the talks that have been given, you know, it's like trying to understand what lies behind all of these changes. And, you know, we draw on different aspects, different sort of literatures to try and understand that, whether it's physical activity, whether it's connecting with others, being in nature, identification as a surfer, and the sort of risk-taking aspects of actually surfing. But I'm not going to go into the kind of the background stuff at this point. But what we do know is that about a third of the participants in the WAVE project would have some kind of autism spectrum disorder. And so although we have established that there is this positive impact on well-being amongst the clients as a whole within the WAVE project, and we've shown that that's consistent across different locations. We're interested in actually trying to evidence this in a sort of stronger way, because with the prescription surf project, for example, which I was going to talk to you about, which is trying to build, Joe is trying to build with Sam an offer of prescribing the WAVE project to young people. And over again, well, it's one factor, it's not the only factor at all, but one factor that comes up is that, you know, amongst the medical community, there is a sort of, well, we would like really, really robust evidence of the impact of this. And showing a sort of pre and post-intervention improvement on these scales, or doing a word association task, isn't really, in their opinion, sufficient. They're looking for what the kind of evidence that they would find in a medical setting. And in a medical setting, the kind of study that you would do would be a randomised controlled trial. So we're proposing to do a randomised control trial that focuses on autism in collaboration with Professor Sir Simon Baron-Cohen, who's the guy on your left. I hope he's happy, but when he comments on the Hoover, he might say, Hannah, you haven't really resized me very well. Because not only are you standing, and am I not Simon Baron-Cohen standing here, but my apologies, Simon, if you don't really look quite like that. Anyway, we'll be able to play this video and he'll introduce himself in a moment. And on the right, we have Dr. Carrie Allison, who's a senior researcher working with Simon Baron-Cohen at the Autism Research Centre in the University of Cambridge. So if you wouldn't mind just playing Simon's introduction, please.
Hi, I'm Simon Baron-Cohen, and I'm the director of the Autism Research Centre at Cambridge University. And I'm working here with Dr. Carrie Allison, who is one of our clinical scientists. And we were both delighted to be invited to collaborate with Joe and Hannah on evaluating whether the WAVE project is of benefit to young autistic people. So Joe and Hannah have explained to us that you're already seeing many autistic young people who report an improvement in self-confidence, self-esteem and well-being following a relatively brief intervention of what's sometimes called surf therapy. But we feel it's really important to put it through what's often referred to as the gold standard in science, which is a randomised control trial. So we're right at the early stages. Hannah's presentation will describe the design of the project, the plans for the project. And we're delighted also that different charities are interested to help with fundraising. Randomised control trials are not cheap, but we think this is a really important opportunity to evaluate a novel, exciting, natural intervention for autistic people particularly young autistic people, to help them with their mental health. Many of you will know that the majority of autistic people struggle with their mental health, which we don't think is intrinsically to do with autism, but is more likely to be a reflection of lack of support. So we look forward to being able to present results of the trial in a future conference, and I wish I was there in person today to be able to present this with Hannah, but it's a pleasure to be involved. Thank you.
So as I say, Simon and Carrie are available on Hoover. So I really do encourage you to interact with them in the next, in the next sort of few minutes, really, or 10, 15 minutes, so that they can sort of get some feel for the questions that you have and then be available to answer them, hopefully, within this session.
Hi.
Oh, I could have done it myself. Okay. So the Waves to Wellness, surf therapy for autism. So as we're saying, it's, well, as Simon's really sort of introduced it now, said our goal is to evidence how surf therapy alleviates distress and improves adaptation and promotes well-being for young people with autism. We'll let you off, but only because it's Joe. So it's really important when you're designing this kind of study to get early involvement of the client group into your study. So although what we're sort of outlining today is our ideas of what it might look like, we will be working very closely with Cambridge University's Patient Public Involvement and Engagement Group, who are a group of families and people with autism who have sort of agreed to work with the Autism Research Centre to help them with their research. So they will be available to help at all stages of the research process. So the design, this phase, and then when we apply for ethical approval from the University of Cambridge, it will all be going in there with client input from the very beginning. And because of the client input, it may well be that what we think we're going to do changes over time. But as I hope I've shown earlier in my talk, that's how we work. We're adaptable, we're responsive, and we try to sort of make these things meaningful to the client groups that we're working with. So we think that we're going to focus on children aged 8 to 12 in this study. Now, I say we think we are because, again, it might be that we go to this panel and they say, do you know what, 8 to 12, that's not quite the age range that we would like you to focus on. We think it might be more like 10 to 15 or whatever. So, again, everything that I'm sort of presenting here is very much at the early stages and might change. As Simon said, this is the sort of gold standard. I think, Jamie, you've made reference to this in your work as well, the sort of hierarchy of research. And having a randomised control trial is kind of up there, really, in sort of academic credibility. And as Simon says, they're complex and they're not cheap to run. And it wouldn't be possible for the charity alone to sort of do this kind of research. It has to be really done in collaboration with these universities. So we're going to be doing a sort of comparing treatment as usual with the WAVE project. That's sort of basically the design. So we will divide the group of people that we have into two groups, and one half of them will take part in the WAVE project, and the other half will do whatever it is that they were going to be doing anyway. So that might be cognitive behavioural therapy, it might be more sort of medicalised, or it might not be anything at all in the 6 months of which the study is taking part. And as part of this design phase, we're also conducting a feasibility study, which is looking at more detail into the data that we already have within the WAVE project. Because not only do we want to have input from the people in the the patient group, we want to make sure that the sort of subset within the WAVE project who we know might have an autism disorder are actually experiencing the kind of well-being that we think they are, because the data that we've analysed, the results that I presented earlier, we tend to present results which are kind of the whole cohort of people. We don't break it down into the kind of issues that people might have when they come to do the WAVE project. But what we're proposing to do is to focus on just the 2019, so definitely pre-COVID, because we don't really want to get into trying to understand what the impact of COVID in 2020 might have been on people's sense of well-being, and look at the pre and post survey and look at that for the group of people who are on a pathway to autism diagnosis. And to do that, we're going to triangulate referrer data that we already have about clients with their pre and post survey responses. And this is not as easy as it sounds actually in practice, because there are lots of different terms that referrers use. These might be GPs, or they might be schools, or they might be other referral agencies. But what we're looking for are terms like autism, ASD, ASC, or Asperger's, things that might indicate this sort of autism spectrum. And then what we'll do is we'll take that group out of our data set and look at, we'll compare them with a group who are matched in terms of perhaps gender and age and the location as far as possible, and see whether for that group of people they're also experiencing enhanced well-being through the WAVE project. And this is important because when you look for getting funding from for these bigger randomized controlled trials, you really need, they're going to say, well, how do we know this is worth funding at all? So we need to have as much evidence as we can to present to them at the beginning. We think they're going to be about 50 young people who we can classify as ASD in this 2019 sample. So it's going to be a relatively small group. But the main study is going to be undertaken, led by University of Cambridge and the Autism Research Centre, so Simon and Carrie. And it's going to go through the ethical procedures that the University of Cambridge has. We think it's going to take about 24 months, 2 years. We're looking at recruiting about 240 young people with autism. And so we're going to be comparing them, of course, to group similar size of people without autism. And we're going to randomly allocate those people, so half of them, 120, to the as usual group and half to the WAVE project group. And we're going to do what we've done before and use a mixture of quantitative and qualitative measures of well-being, and collect them at different points in time. So a baseline before they take part, immediately after they finished, and then longer term. Because as you heard yesterday of the various talks, following up longer term is really important, because it's all very well to say that people there and then have had a good time. But what we really want is to sort of get some handle perhaps on, longer term, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, maybe the rest of their lives, ideally, that taking part in the WAVE project has had a really positive impact. And it's a waiting room design. So what that means is that although half the group aren't going to undertake the WAVE project, it would be unfair and a sort of an ethical concern, really, if, having been allocated to the treatment as usual group, they weren't actually allowed to do the WAVE project, especially if what we show is taking part in the WAVE project is really beneficial for well-being. So in this design, we have to sort of include enough time so that those people who were in the as usual group can, after we've collected data and we're able to compare them, can actually take part in the WAVE project themselves. So we're at the design stage. We're hoping to get ethical approval by the end of this month or early next month, and we're already on track to conduct the feasibility study, and we're applying to funding from the Autism Centre of Excellence, and we're looking at about £1 million for this study. So it's quite a significant investment in research in this area. So, with that kind of money, we really need to do it well. So it's also really helpful, I think, to look to the expertise in this room and across ISTO. And, having heard the presentations yesterday, and I'm sure today and tomorrow, there is a lot of expertise here in the room. So what I would say is, please contact me. And if you have ideas about this, or you want to sort of input into this research, then please get in touch, because you are, as important to make this work really as we are. So it's a collective effort, I think. It's part of the ISTO philosophy. Thank you. So we're hoping to sort of commence it next year and then complete it. I don't think it'll be early 23, actually. I think it'll be early 2024, because I said it was 2 years, and that only adds up to 1 year. So I think there might be a bit of an error there already. Anyway, thank you very much for your attention and for your interest in the research. And, as I said earlier, Kath and I have produced a few bits of paper which sort of describe work that we've done. It's really lovely to sort of be here, having sort of been involved in ISTO from the sort of early days, and sort of seeing how it's growing and seeing how important sort of research is to kind of building this interest in surf therapy. So as I say, there's my email, hannah@placewise.org. Please sort of, feel free to get in touch. And I'm hoping now that Simon and Carrie will be available on Hoover. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. That was amazing. Thanks so much for presenting this to us today. Also, thank you to Simon.
So I can't type fast enough. A question, one question. £1 million, it sounds an extreme amount. Could you just give a brief outline where that kind of cost goes, please?
I will, first of all, I'll repeat the question. Well, actually, what I'll do is better than that. You ask it in your own words.
Okay, I couldn't type fast enough to get the question to you. My question is that 1 million sounds an extraordinary amount of money, and I don't quite understand, how that research is led. So just could you give a brief outline on why that costs so much, please?
I think this is one for Simon, really, but I'll give it Simon in detail. So, how is it working with Simon on Hoover? Have you got access? Okay. So what I want to know first is Simon responding to that question.
It would have to be typed. It would have to be asked on the app first.
Okay. So, yeah, £1 million. It's a huge sum. Approximately a third of that would go to the WAVE project for actual delivery, because, it's really important in this kind of research, obviously, to cover the costs, firstly, of the, of the actual delivery of the WAVE project. And that is in itself quite a contentious issue, because if you go to other research bodies like the National Institute for Health Research and you ask them to fund this kind of study, they say, yes, we'll give you £1 million, but we're not going to give anything to the WAVE project to actually deliver the intervention. So, that's not a sustainable solution and isn't a sort of a partnership model that we want to enter into. So a third of it will go to the WAVE project to actually to do the intervention. And then the majority of it will go towards people who will be out there in the field collecting the data and making it happen and making sure that it happens in a really scientifically rigorous way. So there's a lot of processes that go on in a randomized control trial, like a lot of blinding. So even in the feasibility study, for example, it just takes longer. Partly, but it just takes longer because you have to, whoever does the data entry, for example, can't be the person who does the data analysis, because what we want to do is try and avoid bias going through it and expectations of this working. So we have to, it's about managing that process and doing it in a very scientific, rigorous way, and that is time consuming and involves a lot of woman power. But I'm hoping Simon will also respond online to you. He has. Have we only got one microphone? Okay. So Carrie's response is, a lot of the money will also go towards paying the staff who will do all the assessments. 1 million is a lot, but this is standard for a randomised controlled trial, as every young person has to be assessed before and after in person. It takes a postdoctoral researcher to coordinate this, and a small team of research assistants, and universities also charge overheads, quite significant, about 40%, to support the research. And as Hannah says, we have to pay the WAVE Project charity to deliver this too. So, does that go some way towards answering your question, or would you like to come back? Yeah, okay. Right. Are there other questions from the floor?
Yeah, can you put it?
Sorry, this is a really nerdy technical question. That's why I don't want to put it on the Hoover app. The social desirability subscale in the Sterling Wellbeing Scale. Can you, what are your thoughts on that? Just been working with it. It's quite an interesting concept, but I think it's one that you exclude, but just, yeah.
I'm going to say, Jamie, can we have this discussion at tea? Thanks. So I'm just having a look at some of the Hoover responses. I'm sort of doing your job, aren't I, really? I'm sorry for that. It's a one-woman show. So Simon's response is, although many people refer to autism as a disorder, we prefer the term disability. Someone asks, will you be taking into account the attendance of some children at Surf Club too, especially when looking at the long-term outcomes of surf therapy? Well, I would love to, because I think Surf Club is a really, really important part of the WAVE project. But I think in reality, in the first instance, I think we're going to get us focus on the actual intervention of the 6 weeks, because it starts to get a little bit difficult to sort of control the parameters of the study if you introduce the Surf Club, because it's more difficult to sort of measure things like attendance or regularity, or whereas at least with the WAVE project itself, we can say, you know, it's a 6-week intervention and it's weekly and it takes, 2 hours, and we can sort of be more scientifically rigorous about that part than the Surf Club. But, that's not to say that we're not looking at the Surf Club in other ways, or that we're looking at it in other studies, because this is obviously just, for me, this is a very important study, but it's only one part of the work that I do with the WAVE project. Okay. Are there any more?
The questions that have been asked on Hoover are being answered live online. So if you have any questions, put them on there. They are being answered as we go. There's 2 more here that have not been answered yet. One is, did you think about doing a cross-sectional design so you could still be able to use the data from the people that initially was part of the group treatment as usual?
Yes, we have thought about that, and it will probably be both, because I think what we'll do is within the randomized control trial, we will do it as a as usual versus intervention, but we, as you realise, we will have that data anyway, because they will do the WAVE project later. So obviously we will use that data and analyse that as well. But whether we include that and report it within this defined study is something else. I mean, and that's what's happening all the time, is that we're sort of generating insights which we don't get to share, actually. I mean, I know when I put up that picture of the word associations, I mean, I've written a draft paper about all of that stuff, and it's never seen the light of day. And now I'm here, I'm thinking, okay, Hannah, get your skates on and share it with people. So okay, what was the other question?
All right, the next one is 6 weeks seems such a short time for a sustainable intervention for mental health. What is the time period after the intervention that you look at to be more realistic?
Well, we're looking at doing 3 month and at least a 6 month, and I think probably a 12-month would be ideal follow-up. But you're right, it's 6 weeks is not very much, but even within the data that we already have, we know that the effect that we see, increase in well-being that we see, a lot of the time it's people haven't done 6 weeks. They can attend 6 weeks, but a lot of people don't attend 6 weeks, and yet we still see those significant increases in well-being. So that 6 weeks in itself is obviously, quite good.
There's one more question here. What is the as usual support?
Well, I think Simon would have a better idea of that, because I'm not the sort of autism expert, to be honest, about what kind of treatments are for usual for autism. So I hope that he's going to reply to that one on Hoover.
And we have... Can I just pass you the mic, because then the people on the Hoover can actually hear you as well.
Thank you, Hannah. I think what you're doing is amazing. I'm a local GP, and I refer lots of kids to the WAVE project, and with great benefits. So I think what you're doing is brilliant, and it needs to happen. It needs to become a resource more available for everybody. What I'm intrigued by is you're referring to the usual cohort, and what I know that's similar to what this person's just asked, but what those therapies will be, whether they're NHS funded, whether they're private. As you know, the variation in therapies is huge. The waiting lists are huge. Mental health services in Cornwall are under huge pressure, and kids can wait for 6 weeks. I mean, we as GPs deal a lot with children with mental health issues, so sometimes their usual therapy will be just seeing me kind of several times in that 6 weeks. So I guess that's a difficult part to kind of control, but undoubtedly the outcome will be that the WAVE project and surf therapy will be hugely kind of beneficial even in that 6 weeks. So well done. But yeah, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a question here. And then I come to you again.
Thank you. It might be a question for Joe, but I just wondered whether you could frame what if this research happens, goes ahead in 2023, the impact will be on the surf therapy community and kind of how this is perceived.
See you in Puerto Rico. To find out. Part of this process, to be scientific in a way, is to try not to prejudge. Obviously it's very difficult because I've got 8 years of experience working with the WAVE project of seeing the benefits of it, but it's kind of almost like you have to kind of park that and say, let's go into this with no expectation, or as little expectation as possible, really, about the outcomes, and be prepared for it to show that actually there's no benefit, because that is actually what we have to try, and that's what we're working with. Is the assumption is that there is no benefit. But hopefully there will be. But do you understand what I'm saying? So I wouldn't like to sort of say what it is that we're going to be contributing in 2 years. And obviously, whatever it is that we find will also be in the context of what all of you are finding as well, and other people are here who are obviously doing their own research in this area. So it'll, as I say, it's a team effort. I think there's a question over here.
So I work for the WAVE project for a bit of context, and volunteer recruitment can vary massively from course to course, and I imagine that would be the case from location to location as well. And I was just wondering how you can kind of account for that within the study, if possible.
I think that's a really good, it's a good issue to raise. And I don't think it's one that we've adequately addressed yet in our understanding of the WAVE project. And I'm not sure, on the top of my head, I'm not sure how it feeds, to be honest, how it'll that feeds into the design of this project. But I will take away that and give it some thought. Thank you very much.
Right. There's no more questions on the Hoover app. If you have any questions, put them up there. They're going to be answered. If someone in the audience has any questions, now's the moment. I'll give you a second. All right, Chris wants to ask something.
Hi everyone. Hannah, wonderful presentation. Thank you. I just also wanted to, in case you didn't know, this is not the first randomized control trial surf therapy program that has $1 million grant already attached to it. As a matter of fact, Kristen Walter in Southern California has actually wrapped up her RCT. So we are going to get the results of that and the outcome of it by the end of this year. Actually, I'm not going to promise that. Sorry, Kristen. Probably next year.
Great.
She's listening like, Chris, how dare you? So, you know, I think it's relative. If you guys think about just for a moment the medications that you use and the trillions of dollars that go in to proving the efficacy of that, this is just going to be, you know, par for the course. We're going to need this amount of money to prove efficacy. And I don't want to give away Kristen's results, so I won't say anything. But when that paper comes out, please go to ISTO and find it, because it will continue to help prove our validity. So, Hannah, thanks for the work. We're stoked.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. So that's really important to link up.
All right, any more questions? Yeah, Emma.
I do like this kind of, you know, multimodal kind of from the floor online. It feels just a little, I mean, it's so brilliant to be here in person. And, you know, if we don't have this kind of people interaction as part of the questioning, it just feels like we're missing a trick really from having got here in person. So thanks for this.
I just want to say thank you, Hannah, for your wonderful presentation. And I want to second what Chris was saying, because we actually, we concluded our RCT, we published it in the beginning of 2020. I briefly shared that yesterday, and I don't know if it was because of COVID, but it sort of went a little bit well, I don't think it's had probably the visibility. So we are actually going to organise a little online session in November to present it properly to, you know, whoever is interested. But I really want to just underline that it was because of research that we funded the project for almost 3 years. So
yes.
This is extremely, so the you know, it was because of research that we had 89 kids benefiting from Wave by Wave for almost 3 years. So, you know, I think that answers part of the question. It's not just the research, it's, you know, it's actually...
Yeah, well, I know Joe has had to go and attend something else, but, you know, I know that over and over he said, you know, Hannah, it's your research which has allowed the WAVE project to grow from being a local and then a regional charity to a national and obviously now an international charity. So it has been absolutely, you know, fundamental to the development of the WAVE project, and you know, it's been an absolute pleasure to be involved in it. But you're right, the research is important.
It is. Not everybody that funds, you know, surf therapy projects will do it because of research, but a lot of people do it because of research. So
yeah,
you know, and thank God for that.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, and thank you very much. And anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah, as well. Thank you so much for Carrie and Simon responding to all of the questions on Hoover. If you have questions, as mentioned before, put them on there. They're going to be answered. Otherwise, yeah, we are going to have a break now. And we'll be back at 10:30 for the next speakers.